the only reason I chimed in on my initial tweet was to bring attention to the hypocrisy of a community, regardless of what community it is, stating that they are about diversity and inclusion and uplifting black voices, and then they do the opposite of that. I'm gonna point it out. The whole thing that they've built their community on is DEI. It's Marxist. It's a Marxist ideology, and they're parading it around as diversity.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Reina Creole, of course, always bringing you that spice to sci-fi and pop culture analysis, and always keeping it real when it comes to theme parks. And speaking of keeping it real, with my interview audience with the Queen series, I bring on guests to be as real as they want to be, and I am so honored to have the privilege of having GothixTV on my channel today. How are you doing, my dear?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. Can't wait to get to know you a little more.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to see. I mean, I've seen you on like other channels, kind of like in passing or whatever. And anytime you've had a chance to be on, I've had to like stop and watch because it's like I love your style. Love a lot of what you have, a lot of what you have to say. And in the back of my mind, like, I can't wait for the day when I have it all to myself. So that day, that day indeed has come. So I know some of you are like, what does she have to say about the Black Girl Gamers? We'll get to that. It's like a full course meal. Okay, we got to start with the appetizers and the wine a little bit before we get to, the main course and all of that. So trust me, we will definitely get there. So for people who do not know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel?
Yeah.
As soon as I get
Um.
my computer to cooperate. Come on now. There we go.
Come on, channel. uh. So yeah. So my name is Vanessa. I go by Gothix online. I have been a content creator since 2018, I think, and I originally started as a Twitch streamer, just doing video game content, live streaming, doing improv sketch comedies. It was just a variety of creative things on Twitch. And then, I got pushed out of the streaming community, which we'll probably get to later on. And I eventually decided to start making commentary on political, social issues, spiritual issues, just a bunch of other topics that would usually get someone in trouble for talking about. And so, if you were to ask me, what do I do specifically on YouTube? I just say, as you see in my bio, I do things. I just talk about whatever I want. And that's pretty much it.
I like that because when I got into YouTube and I pretty much got peer pressured into getting into YouTube, peer pressured in that I was like crashing other people's streams. They'd let me come on. They're like, when are you gonna do a channel? I'm like, why? I can just come on your channel. I can just crash your channel. And they're like, no, when are you gonna get one? When are you gonna get one? Okay, if I make a channel, will you guys shut up and leave me alone? And it started from there. So kind of like you, it's just like I put stuff out there that I'm interested in. If folks like it, it's great. If folks don't like it, oh well, can't please
Mm-hmm.
everybody. But
Right, right.
we'll just gotta keep going. So it really feels good to hear that. Some people are just like, I strictly do this, I strictly do that. I'm like, if I strictly did one thing, I think I'd probably lose my mind.
Same, same.
Well, let's see, folks. So first of all, let's get to the crux of what is going on here. So, of course, you have to follow Vanessa on X. She's got some seriously amazing tweets. And when I saw this, then something in my mind clicked about, I guess, something that happened years ago. Like there was some kind of separation. I couldn't remember exactly what that was until I saw this. So, just to kind of read off what you have here, as a former Black Girl Gamers member, I can confidently say these people are full of crap. They do not care about diversity. They promptly kick me out for being anti-Black, aka not making an idol out of my skin color and refusing to hate white people. So why don't you go ahead and take it away, and we'll talk about this here.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was actually in the process of making a long response to them before I got on here. So you're the first person to speak to me before I actually publish a response. Um yeah, so I was a part of their community back in like I want to say like 2018, 2019. And I, contrary to what these people will tell you, I was invited to join their Twitch community and their Twitch team, and everything was fine. Like for a while, their community members would come into my chat. They would be very supportive. I would go to their chat, very supportive. But things started to take a turn for the worse once I started having opinions that didn't align with the opinions that I'm assuming is acceptable for their community.
Hmm.
And, because people ask me, like, why did you join a community like this anyway? Like, why would you join something that emphasizes skin color anyway? And I'm like, well, because back then I was stupid and I believed the lie that my skin color is a hindrance to my success. So I joined this community. And then when it really came down to it, it was like, oh, wait, the diversity doesn't actually mean anything unless it has to do with diversity of thought, you know? And that's when the friction started because I thought differently than a lot of the community members.
It is interesting that that you say that, because some people, they will say, well, Black Girl Gamers, why does it have to be called Black Girl Gamers? I'm like, it's not the name that's the issue. You could call, yourself, white guy kilt wearers or whatever the heck it is that you want to call yourself. The thing is, it's like, is it based on voluntary association and acceptance, or is it based on, supremacy? Or
Right.
is it based on bigotry? There's a big difference. Because I'm an engineer. So back when I was like in grad school, we would have these outreach programs to kids in urban environments to kind of let them know about these programs that were out there. And I would have a couple of white parents that says, "Oh, was that all for Black kids?" I'm like, "No, that's against the law. That's
Hmm.
not what that's about at all. If your kid wants to join the program, that's perfectly fine. But the majority of our outreach is to go into those communities where people don't know about these opportunities,
Sure.
and it's about outreach. So that's different than saying, okay, well, you can't be here if you're quote unquote anti-Black.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, what do you mean, by that? And it's very
Right.
nebulous, and I'm actually have you talk about that in a bit. One of the first places that I ran into something like this before I got into YouTubing, I was when I say obsessed with researching my family's genealogical history,
Really?
like pulling up, records. I did the DNA test, which is still strange, but it's true. With all this, that's why I say it is Creole, because my family's actually been in the Americas for centuries, like literally. When Columbus showed up in the Caribbean, guess what? The rest of my ancestors showed up with them as well. So looking through all of these historical records of my family, some who were enslaved, some who were not and owned slaves, and they happened to be Black, and some who were just indentured, white servants. You're finding out all this information. Well, in some of these groups, we'll say this one particular group that I was in, they did not want you talking anything about if you had any white relatives, whether they were free, whether they were abolitionists, whether they were slave owners, whether they were, whatever. They didn't want you talking about that. And they specifically did not want you calling ancestors slaves.
Wow.
They literally wanted you to say, well, you have to say enslaved, right?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I'd happened to make this post because I was very excited to find out that one of my ancestors who, he was a slave. When he was freed within 10 years, not only could he read, not only could he write, but he also had his own property. That was a big deal, for him. So he had all this property. I'm like, look at all this progress. It's like someone who formerly, was a slave, and they had all this stuff happen. So you would think people would be like, that's awesome. We don't even talk about, Black people being property owners and tradesmen and all of that, not to within 10 years at the end of slavery. No, I get a nasty message. I traced your post because you said enslaved people. I said, excuse me? They're like, yeah, we don't refer to them as slaves because that's inhumane and we just call them enslaved. I said, well, what does calling them what they are differ from calling them the circumstances that they put themselves in? I said, I don't understand that. That makes no sense to me. Oh, well, you can't say that. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm leaving your group. And they're like, well, no, really. I mean, you can just, if you put the post back up and just use the word enslaved, everything will be fine. I said, no. This is your group. You can run it as raggedy as you want. I will not be in that group because of this. I will go someplace else. And that was the first time that I ran up against that. There's a certain way of being Black.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, guess what? You're out of the club,
Yep.
and
You ain't Black.
no, yeah, exactly. You ain't Black, and as a self-identified member of the Black police, I hereby revoke your Black card. That's pretty much.
Oh wow. That's funny. Yeah, I definitely notice like these types of communities, they like to weaponize language and change definitions to fit a specific narrative. And I thought about this recently. My friend asked me this and it blew my mind. He said, how come if you call a Black person a colored person, they get mad? But if you call them a person of color, it's fine. I'm like, this is actually it's the same word, but they use it for like a political narrative. It's bizarre. Yeah, I'm sorry you went through that, but that's crazy. I like how just quick you're like, I'm leaving. Me on the other hand, I tried to hold on for as long as I could. For some reason. I think, and honestly, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but growing up, I had people around me say things like, you're trying to act white. Even in my family, like, you don't want to be Black, you're not proud of your skin color. And so, like, there was, I guess, a sense of me ever since a childhood of me trying to cling on to this Black identity that eventually I just said, I don't need this. Like, this is worthless, actually. Like, I have this complexion, but that's not who I am. So that's cool that you left.
Yeah, I pretty much just had it, but that that was just that was me. If I wanted to be like, there's some groups where I'm like, okay, let me see how long I can hang in here, and it's just like, no,
Yeah.
I'm completely out because, like you, because I've had a similar experience growing up, where it was like if you were using proper English, you were quote unquote, acting white. I'm like, well, where the heck do you get off, saying that? And this is what they would do, repeatedly.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things that I found is when I had left, gone to college, and come back after being around a bunch of people where it wasn't really about what you look like. I mean, yeah, it's like I tell people, don't be ignorant. Yes, there's plenty of racism that's out there. It's nowhere near the way that it used to be. Like when my grandfather was growing up, and every day he wasn't called the N word was a day that didn't end, and why. That's,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much it. You grew up in the South. But after being in that type of environment where people were competing on merit, you're here, okay, yeah, it's all on merit as opposed to what you look like. I go back, and then when I hear oh, well, you're acting white, I'm like, well, acting white has made me very well off. So what's your problem? I
Right.
mean, I'm just like, if you have people like Jay-Z making tons of money, are they, are they are they acting white? So I never really understood that until I started to see some of the mechanisms behind it. But a lot of it is about control, making you doubt who you are as a person, and basically saying, you need us. Without us, you're nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really all about control, and and this is nothing new either. Like, when I after this I had this falling out with this community, I started to go down a rabbit hole of reading
Hmm.
and just learning history that I never learned before. And, I'm reading things from like, Booker T. Washington is someone that I always bring up, where this guy he was born into slavery
Hmm.
and ended up becoming a leading voices um for black people that weren't slaves anymore. And he even describes how a lot of black folks refuse to uh, surrender their mental slavery. It's like they were free, but they were still mentally enslaved in many aspects. And so instead of doing the work to better yourself, it's better to just blame everything on white people or the system. And this is like from years ago, and I still hear the same exact narrative today. And for as much as people like to say that they're doing the work, it's like, well, when is the work finished? Because you guys have been doing the work for generations. When does it end?
That is a very good point. And I remember when you put that post about Booker T. Washington on X, because Booker T. Washington, I started when I saw a quote from him. Again, this is back when I was doing family research. One of the time periods I have done the most research on my family is during Reconstruction,
Mm,
because I'm just like, what happens when you have a society that's thrown up in the air, so to speak, and people have to readjust? This is like 10 years after the end of the Civil War. You have a group of people who were slaves. Now they're no longer slaves anymore. Society has to adjust. It's like, what are you going to do? Is it that you're just going to hate the white people that that you live around? Because at that point in time, Confederate money was worthless,
mm-hmm.
absolutely worthless. And you had black people who were trying to figure out how the heck, we don't have slavery anymore. So how are we going to, how are we going to survive? And you have some people like W.B. Du Bois saying, all we have to do is just worry about social stuff. And Booker T. Washington was like, no, we need to build up, our worth as a people. Do you have a trade? Can you do X, Y, and Z? You have to learn how to live with, with these white people now who they're used to looking at you a certain way. That is not going to change overnight. So there's the things that you can control to provide for you and your family, and, uplift your community. But at the same time, you have to learn how to live with these other people in a different social structure. So reading his autobiography and some of the things that he said, and I'm just like, this could be written now, especially when he
No.
talks about you have a certain group of people who are financially invested in the races being agitated
Yes.
with each other.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, so it's and I don't think there's anything wrong with because whenever I've brought up Booker T. Washington or any of these other people from our past that still managed to navigate society during seemingly more racist times. Like, I think we can agree
Oh
that
yeah.
back when he was alive, it was more racist. So how is it that they were still able to make it, but with all of the resources we have today, we're still blaming everything on the system? Something isn't adding up here.
No, it's really not. And I think that's also a reason why you have certain people, like in this group of people, who refuse to go back and learn the lessons of history. It's like for them, history only started when they paid attention to it.
Mm,
So they have no idea that during Reconstruction, there were banks that wouldn't lend to black people. Black people started their own banks, started their own businesses. You had Jim Crow laws that basically told you what you could and could not do as a black person, and that was codified into law. And one of the reasons why I say the Second Amendment is one of the best things that ever happened for black people, because you had people going around trying to lynch people, trying to intimidate people. My grandmother told me, she's like, everybody knew how to use a shotgun. Everybody knew how to knew how to do that, because you had a seriously racist society at that time. But with the civil rights movement, all that started to change. So it's like, okay, racism isn't exactly making people money or
yeah.
anything like that. So society has to change. And I think people do not realize that there was a time when racism truly was into everything, because it was codified into everything. But now it's not like this now. I mean, yeah, you got some people out there who can be staunch racist. They're out there. You can't really get
Sure.
rid of them. But the thing is, now it's not cool to be like that. And you will get, you know, punished society wise, financially wise. There's no incentive really to go out there and do that. So
Yeah.
it's like, why are you reinventing a struggle and you're not telling a whole story about the struggle, but you have to invent something.
Mm. Well, I think there's I believe that a lot of people I think it's a result of also some people trying to find purpose in life. Like
Mm,
I always say that inevitably people always want some type of a dragon to slay. And if you get rid of all of the problems, let's say you're trying to fight to end racism and you get rid of the racism, you're going to find another problem to complain about because what else do you do at that point, you know? It's like that's really what they're trying to achieve is getting rid of any type of, I don't even want to say bigotry because some of the things are just so ridiculous now. Like we're even looking at microaggressions. Like we got to get rid of microaggressions. If it's micro, then why are we talking about it? Like, I don't understand. But there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be things that hurt your feelings. So what are you? You're. I think Thomas Sowell puts it best. It's the quest for cosmic justice. It's like you're trying to seek justice for something that is like beyond comprehension.
yeah, funny that you mentioned that, because it really is. It's like you have to have some kind of boogeyman, some kind of perpetual boogeyman that's out there. Like case in point, I remember reading about, oh, we have to get more black people into STEM careers. I'm like, that's been going on for decades. What are you talking about? Oh, we have to get more black people hired at Google. I'm like, why? Just like, oh, well, just need it for better diversity. I'm like, okay, so not merit, but you want quote unquote diversity. No, they have a problem because there aren't enough black people. I said, let me explain something to you. Okay. Weirdos pick careers like engineering and computer science. Okay. We just do. There's an extremely small group of people who have that skill set, and an even smaller skill set who happen group of people who happen to be, who happen to be black. There are companies that have to fight over that small pool, and we all know it. That it's just like, oh yeah, okay, we know what our worth is, but we like this company over here
Yeah.
instead. So it's like you have that pool that's already small by the number of people who enter it, and then even smaller by the number of minorities that are in it. So it's like it's not a Google problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a talent pool problem.
Right.
But to explain it like that, oh, you're anti-black if you talk, if you bring that up. It's like, no, that's realistic. And
Mm-hmm.
that realism was actually taught to me by some people. I mean, you were talking about a tough time about some of my professors who used to be black engineers in the 60s, okay? Who would talk about who would talk about this stuff. So it's frustrating,
Yeah.
to say the least.
I can imagine. Yeah, engineering. That definitely. I would say you guys are weirdos, but like you have to have a desire for that. It's like when people say, "Oh, well, there's not enough blacks in this particular field." Okay, well, why is it? Is it just because there's a gatekeeper that says no blacks allowed, or is the desire not there for people to pursue that particular field? And like you said earlier, you can do outreach. Like if you know that there's not a lot of people of a specific demographic, you can do outreach. Sure, maybe they don't know that these fields exist. That's a possibility. But I think for the most part, when people try to use diversity quotas to say, okay, we got to get X amount of black folks in engineering, for example, I think what they're trying to say is we need to get X amount of black folks who hold a particular belief system within engineering. Because we have to consider the people who benefit from these diversity quotas are probably people who are already utilizing skin color as like their identity. It's like
Hmm.
if you take affirmative action for a second, people who benefit from affirmative action are going to think a certain way about affirmative action. So you're really just cultivating a space where people think the same and then using diversity as a disguise for it, for what you're actually trying to do.
Hmm. 100%. Yeah, it's nuts. But speaking of diversity, because I'm
Oh,
glad you brought that up, because we are so gonna hit this one. Okay, so when I pulled up your profile and I saw this meme, I collapsed. I was laughing so darn hard.
you mean you weren't offended?
No, no, no. I was not offended whatsoever. I think the people who are quote unquote offended uh, are just happy with the leftovers that have been thrown out, as if
I
you know
agree.
race swap the character, and and that's
Yeah.
fine. That's all you need to do. But it's just like, no. I will admit, at first when I heard the idea about, oh, we're gonna have Little Mermaid and she's gonna be black, I'm like, okay, well, Disney's trying to get that money. Okay, so they probably got some big name, lined up. It's kind of like with Rogers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. I remember when
Mm-hmm.
that came out, you had Brandy and you had oh
Whoopi.
my gosh, Whitney Houston.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's like, who's gonna who's gonna complain about that? You got
Right.
Brandy and Whitney Houston. They're big names, and no one made a big deal about it because it was Brandy and Whitney Houston.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, we just want to go and watch it. So I'm like, okay, they probably got some big name or something, for this. It's like, and it doesn't really make any sense, but okay, we'll see what they do. Well, when they bring out the promo pictures for this, and you see, number one, not only is the actress, it not really known as an actress. I guess she was Haley Bailey. I guess she was no more of a singer than an actress, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They bring her up. It's like, ugh, okay. And then her hair's not even red. Like, okay, that doesn't make sense either. And you don't have what people would see, as Ariel. And I'm just like, I'm not really down with this. But then you would hear people like, this is great. Little black girls can finally see themselves in Ariel. And I'm just like, I don't get it, y'all.
Yeah. Well, that's like you just said. Because I've heard that argument too. It's so black girls can finally see themselves. Well, first of all, Ariel, Little Mermaid was my favorite Disney movie growing up, and I liked it. And skin color wasn't even really anything that I recognized in the film. It's like this is just a good movie. I like this character. I relate to her personality. Um, but I think that's the underlying point of these identity politics. It's you're trying to get people to look for themselves in skin color. And eventually that can be used for other things. Like, so they're essentially getting people when they're young, getting kids when they're young to look at everything as race instead of as merit or like, you know, what the person's personality is. It's just, you know, it's just skin color. So, I never personally liked the Cinderella that you mentioned. I was like, man, even as a kid, I'm like, yo, this is not Cinderella. Something's wrong here. But no, I mean, I get what you mean. And you know, I have a friend who's he's the director of my documentary, and he was talking to me about, you know, when in filmmaking, there's a certain type of color grading that you do with movies, and
Hmm.
it doesn't, the fact that they got a dark skinned actress to portray a character that lives in the deep ocean doesn't make any sense because the ocean's dark. So you got dark on dark. So the color scheme right off the bat, it doesn't look good. Like when those screenshots came out of the film, I'm like, this doesn't look good.
Mm-mm. No. And you had people who were twisted, like, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about. It's just like, look, from a technical standpoint, they're not pulling it off
Mm-hmm.
at all. But you expect for it to sell based on, well, little black girls can see themselves in Ariel. I'm like, look, I can tell you right now, my nieces, they saw it, they looked at the new Little Mermaid, and the first thing they said is, that is not Ariel. Kids aren't stupid, but Hollywood's trying to make them as dumb as possible.
Right.
If you
Right.
ask me, they're just like, this is not Ariel.
I know.
You know, it's not. And they're trying to say, well, oh, you know, well, it is. It's just like, no.
No. Maybe if they didn't know, if they didn't have anything to compare it to, perhaps, you know, but they can compare it. They know who Ariel is. And furthermore, I think it's just so insulting, like this whole, and granted, I used to think like this too, and you know, eventually I woke up and I realized that there was a lot of flaws to the things that I used to believe. But the whole idea of black representation in Hollywood specifically, it's like, well, that's just so insulting to imply that there haven't been successful, prominent figures in Hollywood that were black. You know, like why is race swapping? Why is that an indicator of true representation? And we made it, and but like all hundreds and thousands of other black actors, you're just neglecting all of their work. Like it's weird. It's so insulting.
Very much so, especially with like the unfortunate, passing of Carl Weathers, and then more recently Lou Gossett Jr. I mean, these were, acting, greats who paved the way with a lot of, the roles that they had, and there weren't, any sloppy seconds
Mm.
given given to them. So it's, and again, just to get to your point, it's insulting for Hollywood to think that we're just supposed to be happy with that.
Right.
Like, we race swapped this character, but we gave you something, isn't it? Isn't it wonderful?
Right.
It's representation, right? No matter how crappy it is, but that's what they want to do, and it's just like it's that's why I'm glad a lot of audiences have been rejecting the most of the stuff that comes out, and I'm always fascinated when a film like that comes out, like Little Mermaid, 'cause it did, and you see the critic score, which is, oh, this is great, it's a triumph or whatever, and the audiences put their score on there, and they're
Like,
like,
nah.
what the hell did I just watch?
Nah. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, because there was a time when Hollywood could care less about representation. They weren't thinking about that. They were just thinking about money. And then you had people like the Hudlin brothers. You had people like Robert Townsend. You had, people who, like the Wayans brothers, they were making their own things, their own pieces of art and putting it out there. And Hollywood saw how much money they're making. Okay, yep, we'll just try that and we'll just race swap that. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah, I think it also. I think money is definitely still an aspect, even though they're throwing money into a furnace essentially with people rejecting these movies. I think there is an investor interest in it. You know, I think there is some entity out there that is continuing to fund these useless projects, even though they know it's going to fail. Because I think there's a bigger goal too. It's like, To sort of, it's propaganda. I mean, if you really think about it, it's whenever they race swap, there's usually a certain narrative that the characters have too. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like talk about oppression or racism. It's like, oh my goodness, I just want
White privilege and microaggressions, and there's
like
always some kind of freaking speech like that.
it's terrible. Like I don't know if you're into horror movies at all.
Oh yeah,
You are? Did you see
oh
the
yeah.
the new Candyman?
Unfortunately,
I I walked out, like I went to the bathroom at the movie theaters and I sat there for like 15 minutes cuz the opening scene where they're depicting police brutality, I'm like I just want to watch a movie. Like I was bugging.
I hear you because I think I was going to see it in the theater, and then all my friends were like, mm-mm, no, no, don't see it, don't see it, don't see it.
Yeah.
So I waited until it came on streaming, and I had the exact reaction that you did. I said, this is what they start out with. Seriously? Now go back to the original Candyman movie because it's urban horror and set
Mhm.
in the Cabrini Green projects, and you're watching, these kids, doing stuff that they have no business really doing. But it builds up the urban legend. That this new one, it didn't do anything
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
build up any kind of horror urban legend. I think I wound up switch. Well, no, I actually watched that whole freaking thing because I needed to uh feel that disgust because I love horror movies, and I'm sick and tired of movies like this ruining my horror experience. Like The Exorcist Believer. Have you seen that?
I've heard stories. I have not seen it.
I lasted 15 minutes
Oh, wow, is that
watching
bad?
that. Watch it. They go back to Haiti and the whole voodoo thing. Like, granted, Serpent and the Rainbow did that a heck of a lot better, and it was
Mhm.
much more interesting. This, it was just like, am I watching a documentary or am I watching a horror movie? I said no, no. I
Wow.
I had to tap out of that. So I got out of that one, but a movie I didn't get out of, and I wanted to leave the first 5 minutes, had to be the American Society of Magical Negroes. Have you had the displeasure of watching that film?
Oh, I still haven't seen it. I'm curious. I don't want to pay for it. I just want to watch, If it's streaming somewhere for free, I will watch. But I've heard some stories. It's funny. I have a friend who is an illusionist, like he's a magician,
Hmm.
and he's black, and I'm like, you're actually a magical Negro. Do do you know that?
Oh
Shout out to Cedric.
my gosh. Oh my god, that's hilarious. Uh, but this darn film, the American Society of Magical Negroes, and it's interesting. That's what they called it that because it's basically the whole talented tenth thing from
Mhm.
W.B. Du Bois, like the talented tenth. We have to hold up, the rest of the race. And if I had to explain it, it would if somebody would have told my uncle, who he can be kind of racist at times, but he's a product of his environment in the 60s. He's just like, if you mean to tell me you got this small group of uppity Negroes telling me that the world is only good because they're kissing up to white people, get out of here. That is literally the crux of that. That movie has wound up pissing off black people and white people at the same time. So perhaps it has done its job.
Wow,
I don't
I gotta watch it now.
have plenty of wine to watch it because I wish I had when I went to the movies. I wanted to leave after 5 minutes. I'm like, hell with this.
Uh,
Oh, but to get to the meat of what is going
mhm.
on and why I have Vanessa here on my show, this whole thing with Black Girl Gamers. Now, full disclosure, Black Girl Gamers has threatened that Park Place with a lawsuit. Your girl is part of that Park Place, so I really am taking this personally here. Apparently, after there was a certain live stream, which I believe you were on. I think it was Flashcast, I believe. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So after Flashcast ends, this 33 tweet thread, which is locked by the way, goes on to basically try and disprove everything that you have said with respect to your involvement in Black girl gamers. So,
Mm.
what I would like to do, and I will because it's my darn show, I will give you the floor to respond to this missive, which yes, it is a punk ass move to do this after Flashcast stream, but we'll just give you the benefit of the doubt and figure y'all had to get your story straight first
Mm.
before you went and posted it. So take it away. Just what is it that they're right and wrong about, or 100% wrong? We'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I mean, they are correct in because they've reiterated this multiple times in the thread that I was never employed. I was never a contractor. I was never a freelancer, which I've never claimed to be. But they keep reiterating this for some strange reason. I don't know if that's just because of the commentary around, because a lot of people are making videos about this and adding things in to the conversation. But yeah, I was a member and I believed in the Black Girl Gamers message when I was a member. Uh, Obviously, I don't believe in the message anymore. And if I'm being fair here, the reason I don't is because of Black Girl Gamers. So it's like, so I sort of, because of their actions, the actions of their community, I no longer believe the things that they claim to stand for. Um, but like, yeah, if you go through that thread, this to me is a very pathetic attempt to frame their image in a very positive light. And I mean, that's fine if you want to do that. Personally, I don't really care about this community specifically. Like whether or not this community continues to exist, it doesn't really affect me at all. The only reason I chimed in on my initial tweet was to bring attention to the hypocrisy of a community, regardless of what community it is, stating that they are about diversity and inclusion and uplifting Black voices, and then they do the opposite of that. I'm going to point it out because the whole thing that they've built their community on is DEI. It's Marxist. It's a Marxist ideology, and they're parading it around as diversity. And the last couple of years, ever since I had my falling out with this community, I've done a lot of reading, and I know their playbook. And I go on YouTube and I see a lot of people talking about how there's wokeness in video games and movies and it's everywhere, and it's like it's because of this type of ideology that is just everywhere. So all that to say, I know I went on a little bit of a rant here.
No,
Their
it's okay.
threat
This is what this is for.
their threat proves nothing. It proves absolutely nothing. If anything, it illustrates to you me experiencing my political awakening in real time. They have screenshots in there of me crying about someone saying the N-word to me and then being racist to me. And then they respond by saying, see, we provided her a safe space. But for some reason, when it was their members attacking me, they didn't see any evidence of that. They saw no evidence of that, and it was no longer a safe space for me. So I was the problematic one. And what gets me is that they're like, oh, we never launched a formal investigation against the harassment that Gothix experienced, and yet these 33 threads are filled with screenshots that were compiled over the last couple of years about statements that I've said. So you mean to tell me that you didn't see statements of hundreds of your members harassing me, but you managed to compile all of the statements I've said about you? It's very, very unlikely. And if you open up, I don't know if you can open up that thread if it will show you anything. I don't know what it looks like when you're signed out.
Um, yeah, I'm signed out.
Oh,
So
by the way,
let's
this
see.
person that's retweeting this individual, this this individual was a part of my community. Like I don't like. I also don't want it to make it seem like I'm trying to drag people specifically because they dragged me, and I don't like reciprocating that because I know what it felt like. This is, like I said, just is more so the ideology that I'm not in agreement with. But this individual, yeah, she left my community after I was calling out nonsense regarding Black Lives Matter. so, so, like, my problematic statements are I don't support Black Lives Matter. I don't support people burning down businesses. I don't support the narrative that the media is perpetuating about George Floyd. I believe there's something fishy going around here. Problematic. So, yeah.
Ah, it's it. First of all, 33 tweets in a thread. I did read through this, and it was just like, come on now, really?
It's there's a there's a part in the thread where it's a DM, a Twitter DM that I sent to them, and the screenshot it's like two screenshots I think, and if you read them side by side, if you read the message in the first screenshot, you read the second one, you'll see that it doesn't make sense. It's like there's something missing in the screenshot, and I thought about it because I almost missed it, and I said, hold on a second, they omitted a certain paragraph in the message that I sent them. And the paragraph in question is me telling them specifically who was harassing me, giving them an example. So they're claiming that, oh yeah, we tried to help, but we didn't hear back. She blocked us. No, that's a lie. But you know what the thing is? Again, and this is why I make the point to say I care more about the DEI more so than taking down black girl gamers. I don't give a crap. And it's because people are going to believe what they believe. Every historical statement is believed on authority regardless. So people who like my content, they're going to believe me. People who like BGG, they're going to believe them. It doesn't matter, you know what I mean? So I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I'm just stating the truth and I've got nothing to hide.
And that's what I tell a lot of people about when I put out my opinions on my channel. I'm like, I'm not really here to change your mind. I mean, I'm giving you what I think. If you decide to change your mind, that's an action that you do on your part. But I'm not going to tell you what you should think.
Right.
And groups like Black Girl Gamers seem to be all about telling you what you should think, what you should say, and how you should act. And it's just like, folks, we've seen this before. Go look up the Cultural Revolution in China. I'm just going to say
My
that's actually
goodness. Yeah.
I did. I'm kind of like a little bit hypersensitive to this because I just finished watching the Three Body Problem on Netflix, which is
Hmm.
actually a cool watch if you're into sci-fi, and the parallels that they make between what happened in the Cultural Revolution in China and stamping out free thought and questioning and logic. It is unfreaking canny. So go back and watch that if you don't want to if you don't want to read up on the whole Cultural
Yeah.
Revolution in China. Trust me, it's worth checking out. I just like you're saying, like all of these tweets, if you go through this thread here, truly is about you waking up to, or we'll say, you becoming more aware of things that are going on. Here's my thing: prohibit the exhibition of anti-blackness. Okay, so what is that?
What is that? What's the standard of that?
How do you Is it like anti-black to say you don't like Barry White or something like that? I mean, you have to. You have to. It's such a nebulous thing, and it's
Yeah. Yeah,
nebulous on
and it's
pot of people.
intentionally that way too. So they can sort of like weed out and identify who's who's not on their side, you know? Um yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're anti-black just by associating with me because
Mm,
I am a threat to blackness. I don't know how this works. Can someone give me instructions?
All I know is it's usually I set the counter. I reset the counter every time I go too long on X without being called racist. Yes, that's
Wow,
the
you
joke
have a
on my
counter.
channel.
That's
Have they
funny.
called you racist yet? And my followers on X, whenever someone will say something like, "Oh, well, you're an old right winger," I'm like, "Get the popcorn, y'all."
Wow.
It is just,
Oh.
it's a hot mess. But it's like you go from that to transphobia. Okay, so what exactly is that? You know,
That's a good question.
because people will throw this out like, oh, well, you're transphobic, you're homophobic. It's like, no, I do not have an irrational fear of
Right.
said group. That's the definition of the word. I don't have that. Just because I may disagree with you deciding to be trans, that's you're an adult, that's your decision. You do not have to like it.
Yeah.
I don't have to like it. You do not have to, try to get my acceptance. I don't even care about that. But me saying that doesn't constitute hate or transphobia, and that's usually when I get blocked. But again, another cloud of ism or phobia or whatever
Hmm.
to try to guess. Respectability politics. What the heck is that?
So I had to look that up today, actually, because I'm like, and first of all, it's also worth noting that these rules. I was in the group a couple of years ago. Are these rules from today or from a couple of years ago? You know what I mean? Granted, I was still sort of like, I guess I would consider myself an NPC for the political left, where I just sort of like went along. I didn't think much of it. I'm like, oh yeah, diversity, inclusion. I didn't ask the questions like, what constitutes its hate speech? What is problematic? What is anti-black? I didn't ask these questions. Um, but like, where was I going with that? There was a point. Oh yeah, yeah, respectability politics. I looked that up, and that's essentially groupthink. It's it's a it refers to the set of beliefs and behaviors employed by marginalized groups in an attempt to gain acceptance and approval from the dominant culture or society, which usually involves adhering to certain societal norms, values, and standards, sometimes at the expense of individual identity. So it's basically we have a goal, and in order to reach this goal, we need to all assimilate to adhere to this set of beliefs and values. Which doesn't make any sense, because if rule number one is healthy debate is natural, how can you debate with someone when you're saying that they also have to adhere to what you believe? I'm so confused.
I have to shake my head because I'm looking. I'm like, what the okay, I'm looking, and now I think this kind of makes sense a little bit. I'm looking at over here, and let's see what started as a philosophy promulgated by Black elites to uplift the race by correcting the bad traits of the Black poor has evolved into one of the hallmarks of Black politics in the age of Obama. Okay,
There you
remember I
go.
talked about the talent of 10?
Hmm.
There's nothing new under the sun. It's the same
Same thing.
exact thing
Yep.
under a different name. Hot diggity dang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, discrimination against religion, culture, sexual orientation. Okay, that's kind of like, well, I guess unless you're Christian or unless you're Jewish, then it's like throw that out the way. We can
Well, I
discriminate
am
against what you
Christian.
want.
I am Christian now, but I wasn't Christian when I was there. But I would have still believed in two genders. So by this rule, I would have still been kicked out. So
Oh, oh Lord, this would drive me absolutely insane looking at this. Let's see. While she was in the community, Black Girl Gamers supported and uplifted Gothix TV, and she reciprocated the support. However, she was never a freelancer, contractor, employee. Well, nobody asked about that really. supported and uplifted. Well, I guess that had a time limit on it. I'm just like, nah, we
Mm,
can't do that for you. We can't do it
can't do
for
that.
you,
Not no more.
for you anymore. Let's see. Our private community was a safe space. And let me ask this question.
Hmm.
Especially, granted, I'd been gaming and I'd been out of the whole thing for a while. Point in time, more money than time. The games that I buy were not for me. Games that I bought were like for my nieces and nephews who knew I'd buy the darn things, or whatever. But start get back into gaming within the past year or so. And I've noticed this whole thing about quote unquote safe spaces. I never needed one of those in the past, never cared about that one, anything like that in the past. And what exactly is this? Because when I see the word quote unquote safe space, keeping you safe from what?
Hmm.
Reality?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. And it's crazy because like I think back on it and my prior to becoming a Christian, my worldview was always changing. My values were always changing. I grew up playing Call of Duty. I grew up being in Call of Duty lobbies, and if you've grown up in Call of Duty lobbies, you know,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and you develop thick skin. You want to play this game, you're gonna sit there and listen to this rando call you the N word, you know. But for some reason, that didn't translate over to when I started streaming on Twitch, and I think it was because I was surrounded by people who felt threatened by the N-word or by racist insults. And so, I'm in this community that is promising to uplift one another because I've already been told that, it might be harder for you to grow as a Twitch streamer because you're black. So if I want this support, then naturally it makes sense for me to express my grievances about someone calling me the N-word instead of just treating it like I normally would be playing any video game. Just mute them. Like just mute the people. And so this screenshot here, it's an inside look into how, I'm just gonna say it, how fragile I was, where I literally resorted to making a whole document of words that I would ban from my live chat, if anyone were to use those words. And really, that's what the whole safe space thing is. It's keeping people in a bubble so they don't emotionally mature, so they don't have emotional resilience, and then using the victimhood of these people to push for censorship, to go after people who speak out of line. Because going back to the point of what is hate speech, what's the standard of hate speech? If you're saying hate speech means, for example, let's just take for example, if I say black people love fried chicken, which I love fried chicken. I don't know about you, but
God, I do too.
I love
Shoot.
fried chicken. If I say black people love fried chicken, and then someone gets offended by that and they say that's hateful, so now you can label black people love fried chicken as hate speech. And now you can take that to a legislative level where now we're going to ban that phrase from being said in public. And so it's really censorship is what it trickles down to. Is before you can push for censorship, before you can ban certain ideas from the public square, there has to be a demand for you to create those laws. So if you have a population of people who are so weak where they can't function unless all the racism and microaggression is gone, then that is your perfect voter base.
Wow.
But I'm
It,
anti-black, so what do I know?
but oh, and it just astounds me. This whole like trying to control speech, like
Hmm.
those Call of Duty lobbies. I remember that. It's like everybody has something to say about somebody else. Either you
Yep.
had a comeback ready, or you just needed to shut the heck up and just take it,
Yup.
and just and just take it somewhere else. But it's like I'm not used to saying, people be saying, "Oh, you can't say that," or you get, like, for example, with Stellar Blade. Like, one of the things that really pisses me off, and there's a lot of things about gaming these days that do, of making female characters ugly.
Bruh.
I'm like, what? Male characters too. It's like you don't want to have these like buff, good looking, characters, like,
Yeah.
ones that I like to play in lots of fighting games. But no, you make them ugly. You make the women ugly and look like potato sacks. I'm like, what? Why is this going on? Oh, well, we have to protect them from the male gaze. I'm like, I hate to tell you this. Well, actually, no, I don't. Women like to look at good look women too.
Yeah, I mean,
Be
it's
real.
I mean, if really, because I have a friend that grew up at the tail end of the Cultural Revolution, and she told me that part of their whole thing is, if we want to talk about equity and everyone being equal, the women weren't allowed to put their hair up, they weren't allowed to dress feminine, they looked like men. Like, so you just make them all, it's a clean slate, and that's really where a lot of this weird gender identity thing comes from. It's like you're trying to get everyone on the same spectrum, and it's like it's all communism, but these people think that they're actually helping. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't doubt that there are people who actually believe the things that they're espousing, whether it's this community or any other community, but I mean, if they think about it objectively, none of it makes sense because it all contradicts each other.
It really does. And I think that's a reason why a lot of them try to quash dissenting thought, or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this seems a lot similar to, X, Y, and Z. Oh, no, 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 no. You all have to think alike. And granted, there are some people out there who feel like, I really want to help. I really want to be an ally. I want to make sure I say the right things, make sure I want to do the right things, because I really don't want anybody discriminated against. It's like, okay, I get that. But you also have to realize, why is there so much of a pushback? Why is there such an insane need to control what people say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Consider that.
Oh, well, trust me, folks, this is this whole
It's going and
tweet
going
stream.
and
It's like
going.
they just went through, dug up some stuff, and just dropped it in here and expected for people to be engaged. Well, oh well, here's the thing. They made sure you couldn't engage with this thread, because they basically you can't reply to it.
Yeah.
You can't you can't have someone come in and basically say, like, the questions that we've been asking on this stream. What's anti-blackness? What's this? What do you classify, as this? And why are you so hung up on the constructed, uh we'll say, your constructed
Mm-hmm.
point that you were an employee? And it's like, you
Mm-hmm.
never said that.
That's not the
You
point.
just
That's not what I'm.
ex-
That's not the
exactly.
point. Yeah. It's like I'm not trying to convince anyone that I work from you. I'm trying to let people know that I know I know what you're about. Like, I don't know your hiring practices. I don't know who works for you, but I know what you're about. And your message that you claim to stand on is not factual. It's a lie. And yeah, I couldn't respond either because they posted this at like 12 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed.
Yeah, it was
I gotta go to
crazy.
bed.
It was nuts. Although I find it interesting they haven't blocked me yet, which makes me wonder what to do.
They will.
Anyway,
You can just
anyway,
check back. They
enjoy the
will.
read, folks. Once I stop providing them with any kind of useful information. And it's all good stuff. So, to kind of wrap things up a little bit here, because I know we've gotten through the main course, but you know what? Hey, let's get ready for some dessert here. So,
Ooh.
courtesy of my friends over at Film Threat, Chris Gore and Alan Ing, apparently you have documentary. Is it out yet, or is it about to come out? Tell us more
It
about
is.
that.
It's out yet. It's currently it's streaming on Lore TV, which is a brand new streaming platform that they're trying to build. Um, but we are also in the process of getting this on Amazon Prime Video, and we're just waiting on them to approve it. And then once that's approved, I will let everyone know. But yeah, it's been out for a little bit,
Yes.
and thank you for all of the hateful comments, because if it wasn't for you, we don't have a budget for marketing, so I'm so grateful for the donation.
What is
It's
it? Eric July says, monetize your haters. Well,
monetize your
it's like you just
haters.
played into my
Yeah.
plan.
Honestly, that wasn't even my intention, but I said, but
Absolutely.
I'm looking at my phone, I'm like, this is getting a lot of traction. Well, might as well. It's like, whatever.
100%. And who knows? Some of you might actually learn some things. Especially, and I'm just curious, do we get to hear some more of your testimony with converting to coming to
Yeah, yeah,
Christianity in this documentary?
yeah. Would you like to see it? Because I can let you see it. I can send you a copy.
Oh, yes, I would.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yes, I'll send you. I'll follow up with you after we're done. I'll let you see it.
Ah, okay. Excellent. Excellent. So, yes, folks, you definitely want to check this out. Whether if you go over to is that the URL Lore TV or
Yep,
Lore.tv?
lord.tv and use code Gothix. You get 10% off your subscription because it's a subscription-based streaming platform. And yeah, just use code Gothix and check it out.
All right. Awesome. Well, I will put that link down in the description box so you guys can go over and definitely check out Vanessa's documentary. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for appearing on my channel. Again, I love the fact that I got you all, got you all to myself, having such a wonderful discussion. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
Um, any last thoughts? I mean, yeah, I love you guys. Hopefully if anyone's watching this who's a part of that community, that they're not super angry with me. But even if you are angry with me, I don't hate you, you know. I want the best for you, and I know firsthand that building your life on racial identity, it's not it's not sustainable, you know? Yeah, that ain't it. That ain't it. There's you have purpose, you have an identity, and it's definitely not your skin color.
Hmm. And it's amazing. There's probably more people than you think who, when they hear about this and things that you've seen, that they're like, I've kind of seen the same things too, but I thought I was going crazy. Well,
Mhm.
there you go.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for spending this time with me. Folks, please do go over, subscribe to GothixTV over on YouTube. Go follow her over on Twitter. And of course, check out her documentary. I will have those links here in the description box for all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, and we will see you next time. Bye.